Hey, and welcome to another Tech Tuesday. This is Chad from Ascension Worship. This week we are talking about 3 objective rules of mixing audio.
Hey, what do you say? Yes, it's that time again. It's Tech Tuesday.
So, as you've probably realized, there are a lot of subjective rules of mixing audio. Some people like the kick drum bright, some people like it dark, some people like the acoustic guitar up front in the mix, some people like it further back in the mix. There are a lot of subjective opinions in audio, but today we're talking about 3 things that pretty much anyone in your congregation is going to pick out if it's not correct. And so if you can get these 3 things right, and a lot of your audience will think that you're an awesome audio engineer, and then you can continue to work on the subjective things, but you'll make the majority of your crowd happy if you get these things right. So rule number 1 is to make your mic calls. What I mean by that is when your pastor walks out onto the stage, the microphone may sound bright, it may sound hollow, it may sound like a lot of things, but then one thing that you want to do is to get sound out of that microphone. If the pastor walks up, starts talking, and the mic is not on for the first few words, you have already failed at being an audio engineer. So the very least thing that you can do is to make sure that you know ahead of time before the pastor's going to be up, have their mic unmuted and ready to fade in right before they start talking. So one video we've done in the past that I'll link into here that is helpful for this is about how to use a run sheet, having some sort of piece of paper and writing out ahead of time at this point, we're going to have the pastor talk and they'll be on this microphone. At this point, this person can talk, they're going to be on that microphone. That really, really helps a lot more than winging it. And the basic idea of the video is to always be thinking ahead to what's going to happen next. So if you're in the middle of song 3, you look down at that sheet of paper and it says next thing is going to be the pastor on the headset microphone. Cool. Go ahead and have that headset microphone fader on your display so it's ready to go. Have your hand on it. And as soon as the band's done, you bring the pastor's microphone up, maybe bring the band down or all the way off, and boom, you're into the next thing. While the pastor's talking, you look back at the sheet. Oh, the next thing's going to be Brother Tom on the pulpit microphone. Well, cool. As soon as the pastor's done talking, you bring Brother Tom up, maybe you bring the pastor down or off, and boom, you're on to the next thing. So the general idea is to always be thinking ahead. And then as a second part to step 1 is to turn those microphones off or most of the way off whenever you're sure that they're done. The less active microphones that you have active at any one time, usually the cleaner your mix is going to sound, the better your monitors are going to sound. So be aware of what you need and what you don't at any given time. And again, if you can just get that right, your crowd's going to think you're an amazing audio engineer right away. Step 2, now that you have the microphones on, you need to make sure that you are avoiding feedback. Now, this can be a very involved subject. Again, there's another video that I'll link called Problem Solving EQ. It talks about how to use EQ to help avoiding feedback, but also more importantly, at least to start with, is how to position your microphones and your speakers to avoid feedback before you even have to touch the mixer. So just being aware of what types of microphones you're using, where they're positioned, how training your people to be right up on top of the microphone, having the speakers in front of the microphone facing away from the microphone. If you can just do those things right away, automatically you're going to avoid a lot of feedback, and then you can delve into EQ if you need to go a little bit further. And again, that video shows some ways to kind of handle that. But if you can avoid feedback, again, that's one of those things. It doesn't matter what kind of person you are when it comes to understanding audio. People know that feedback is bad. Feedback is wrong. If you can get rid of the feedback, then immediately they're going to think that you're an amazing audio engineer. And then finally, number 3, you've got the microphones open, you're avoiding feedback. The final thing that you need to avoid that pretty much any person in the crowd is going to notice is avoid harsh frequencies. So even if people don't really have an ear for audio, usually the very first complaint you're going to get is, it's too loud, it's too loud. Well, it's too loud can mean a lot of things. And this is coming from people who, again, don't understand audio. They just understand that if it's painful, it's loud. So usually, not every time, but usually, if you go and translate what "it's too loud" actually means, you will find that it's usually that there are some harsh frequencies in the mix that make it feel loud because they're painful. And if you can reduce or remove those harsh frequencies, then again, your mix is going to sound much, much better right away, and you will get much, much less complaints. Now, what I'm about to say is a very generic option, but I've found it to be true many, many times, is that a lot of those harsh frequencies are in vocals, especially strong female vocals, in the range of 2 to 4K. If you can find those problem frequencies and bring them down just a little bit, you will immediately get a mix that feels better balanced and more natural and less harsh, therefore less painful and less loud right away without actually making the entire mix quieter. So if you can focus again on those 2 to 4K frequencies, you can usually get a much better balanced mix right away. And again, now people think you're a better audio engineer. So I hope that's helpful to somebody. Again, those 3 tips are: number 1, make sure that when a microphone is being used, you have it on and ready to go. And then when it's not being used, you turn it off and clean up your mix. Number 2 is to avoid feedback, again, using placement of your speakers, and then if you need to, EQ on your microphones. And then finally, number 3 is to avoid harsh frequencies, usually around that 2 to 4K zone. If you can get those 3 tips right, you're going to have a much better mix. You can then start to work on the more subjective things of like, what kind of tone do you want for your acoustic guitar? That doesn't really matter as much as these other 3 things. So start there and then move forward. And I think you're going to have a much, much better mix right away. All right, guys, I hope that was helpful to someone out there. Until next time, have a great week. Again, this is Chad from Ascension Worship. I hope this has been helpful for you and your team. Come back here every Tuesday for new information.